What if Naruto got trained by Shisui Part 2? The day following the mob attack on Naruto dawned with gray skies, threatening to pour rain, and an unusual humidity for the fall weather. Both boys were sleeping soundly when Anko decided to wake them up around 8 in the morning. After their display last night, they deserved to rest up. Quickly shaking Naruto and Sasuke awake, she hurried them out of bed and told them that breakfast was ready and that they had matters to discuss. The boys entered the small kitchen, dining room after a few minutes and rubbing the sleep from their eyes muttered a thanks, as they accepted their breakfast of cereal and toast. First off, Anko started, her face holding no emotion. I want to congratulate the two of you on your performance last night. The way you boys were able to use the water barrier at your age shows great potential and chakra control. Secondly, I want to know what you did to Mizuki. She spat out the silver-haired man's name like she was cursing. The boys exchanged sheepish glances, which were quickly covered by mischievous grins. Well, ever since I discovered the magnetic bloodline, I was looking for a way to attack people directly with it. I've been trying to pull the iron from the ground and tried to do the same thing to humans. But since I can't go and try it on people, I haven't gotten very far. Last night, I think I used the fox's power, and that was how I was able to beat Mizuki-sen, Mizuki. Naruto explained. If nothing else, Naruto had adopted his mother's ideals about hating people. If they crossed him wrong like last night, they were forever an anathema, and he would treat them as such. I just wish he would have used some cool jutsu, so I could have copied them. Sasuke complained. This elicited a laugh from everyone and the mood switched to lighter conversation before the boys had to leave for school. Life settled down and fell into routine for the three. 2 years passed without incident and the boys were starting their, hopefully, final year in the academy. The two had grown up and closer together than anyone could have hoped for. Sasuke had grown close to 5 feet 3 inches, and showed no signs of slowing down, while Naruto was smaller, at 4 feet 11 inches, but was a bit quicker than his brother, who was physically stronger. That day at the academy, the class was reviewing the different techniques that they might have to demonstrate at their graduation exam. The selected skill today was the Henge no Jutsu or transformation. As Iruka-sensei called each member of the class up to change into a copy of him, he couldn't be more proud of his students. They were easily one of the best overall groups he had ever taught. Haruno Sakura. The brown-haired Chunin called out. The pink-haired Sasuke fangirl quickly moved to the front of the class and formed the correct hand seals before calling out, Henge. A puff of smoke appeared and after it disappeared, a perfect copy of Iruka smiled back at the teacher. Very good, Sakura. He admonished the girl. Next up is Uzumaki Naruto. Naruto made his way down the rows of desks and stood in the front of the class. It had been decided after much arguing and yelling, that Naruto should keep the name Uzumaki, since Orochimaru would come back for the boy if he found out he was alive. The only people who knew him as Mitarashi Naruto were Sasuke, Anko, Iruka, Kakashi and the Hokage. Iruka had originally been skeptical of allowing the Kyuubi container into the academy, however after seeing how hard the boy worked and how he interacted with the other students, he grew to like the energetic boy. Naruto adopted the classic Sasuke pose and slouched a bit, before performing the technique perfectly. Good job Naruto. Next up Uchiha Sasuke. Sasuke sauntered to the front in his typical lazy, I don't care type of manner, before lazily forming the seals. No one noticed the unusual twinkle in the raven-haired boy's eyes before it was too late. Henge. The boy said, in a very lazy manner. It was so lazy that it made Shikamaru seem energetic and playful. As the smoke cleared, the sight of a naked woman with black hair greeted Iruka. As his nose erupted in a fountain of blood, he could only think one sentence. The hell, I figured Naruto or Kiba would try something like that, but Sasuke. The class erupted in laughter from the male population and indignation from the females of the class. They couldn't bring themselves to believe that their beloved, Sasuke-kun, would do something so perverted. In another cloud of smoke, Sasuke returned to normal and broodingly walked back to his seat. Or rather, he walked back to Naruto's seat. As Iruka got back up from the floor with wads of tissue stuck up his nose to prevent further blood loss, he noticed the two Sasukes and groaned. He had been pranked. He watched as the second Sasuke disappeared in a cloud of smoke and was replaced by Naruto, who promptly doubled over in laughter at his teacher's expense. Kami, Iruka-sensei, you should have seen the look on your face when I did that. The blonde and black-haired youth cried out in laughter, rolling in the aisle. That night was interesting, to say the least. Anko was torn between outrage and maternal pride at her son's antics. She was very proud of the fact that he could keep up two illusions, which admittedly were his worst skill, and that he had pulled such an elaborate and hilarious ruse. On the other hand, he had done something perverted, and like all women, Anko despised perverts. She settled on increasing the ferocity in her training. Neither Sasuke nor Naruto showed up to class without sporting new cuts from their mother's kunai. Okay, today we're going to be reviewing the Bunshin no Jutsu. Clone technique, Iruka explained. Naruto groaned. Bunshin was his worst skill. It wasn't that he didn't know how, he had copied the seals with his Sharingan and practiced the technique for hours, but he simply couldn't do it correctly, and for the life of him, he couldn't figure out why. Sasuke didn't know what was wrong and his mother wasn't much more help. She figured that it had to do with his abnormally large amount of chakra and, in comparison, his poor chakra control. Truthfully, Naruto had been practicing his control since he started training with Kakashi, but with all his extra chakra, he always seemed to be behind the others. Suddenly inspiration struck him well, it struck him. He'd ask the old man. He'll know what to do. After class, Naruto told Sasuke to go on home without him and that he had something to talk with the Hokage about. Sasuke was about to follow his brother anyway, but was sidetracked when a group of fangirls began to chase after him. Naruto headed towards the Hokage's office and asked to see the old man. The secretary told him to wait, because the Hokage was in a meeting and couldn't be disturbed. As the meeting ended, representatives from the surrounding villages exited the office and Naruto walked past them all into the Sandame's office. Hey, I've got a problem, Naruto said, when he saw that he had the Hokage's attention. I can't do a Bunshin and I can't figure out why. Mom thinks it's 'cause I've got such high amounts of chakra, but she's not sure. Can you perform the technique for me? Asked the gray-haired leader. Naruto performed the technique and was rewarded with 3 dead and deformed clones. Yes, I would agree with your mother, you do have too much chakra. The Sandame said. Now, Naruto, there are other forms of the Bunshin that are actually more useful. There's the Mizu Bunshin that creates a solid clone out of water, and the Tsuchi Bunshin is made of earth. These require more chakra than normal, so you should be able to do those without problem. The only problem is that we don't have any way to teach you those particular techniques. If you ever encounter them, do me a favor and copy them, that way we can write them down. The old man chuckled at the joke. The only other variation we have of the Bunshin is the Kage Bunshin, shadow clone, which takes up a large amount of chakra, but it creates solid clones. Unfortunately, since it uses such a large amount of chakra, it would be a bad idea to try and copy it, so you will have to learn it the old-fashioned way. Now it is a kinjutsu, so I can't just give you a copy of the jutsu, but if you'll stop by my office, say, this weekend, I will teach you how to perform the jutsu. Naruto sat in a chair and stared at the old man. He was going to learn a kinjutsu. Plus, he would be able to pass the graduation exam this way. Okay, I'll stop by over the weekend to learn this jutsu. See ya later, old man. Naruto exclaimed as he exited the office. That weekend Naruto returned to the office of the Hokage to learn the forbidden technique Kage Bunshin. It turned out to be easier than he expected, but the old man didn't lie when he said it used a lot of chakra. The principle behind the skill was simple enough. Take a normal Bunshin and put about 10 times more chakra than necessary to create one clone, and then another 3 or 4 times as much chakra to sustain it for any reasonable length of time. In the end, it was very easy to see why it was forbidden. He had agreed to show Sasuke, but both boys realized that the full-blooded Uchiha didn't have the chakra reserves necessary to perform the technique. However, the two did find another form of solid Bunshin they could both use. They were watching some of the different shinobi of the village train, and found Kakashi was dueling with a green spandex-clad man with thick eyebrows and a bowl cut, except that Kakashi was a Mizu Bunshin. The two boys then conned the lazy Junin into showing them the technique, which they learned and used in their training routines. Time moved quickly after that weekend. The two boys continued to train, although they also found time to do other activities. Both Naruto and Sasuke had become friends quickly with Shikamaru and Choji, although it was mostly Naruto who hung out with the lazy boy and the potato chip-addicted preteen. Sasuke had struck up a rivalry with Hyuga Neji, the previous year's #1 rookie, and seemed to be competing against each other in just about everything. After nearly 3 straight years of being rejected by Sasuke, many of his fangirls decided on another tactic. They tried to become friends with Naruto, Shikamaru, and Choji. Naruto hasn't been able to walk through town without being hounded for the last 4 months, while the other two boys have only recently become targets. Luckily for them, or terribly unlucky for Naruto, Shikamaru's laziness and Choji's constant eating seemed to be turn-offs in their own right, while Naruto couldn't claim any of the previous self-defense mechanisms and was sorely tempted to try his mother's tactics and begin to throw kunai indiscriminately. The graduation exams rolled around and as expected Sasuke was slated to become Rookie of the Year, while the position of top kunoichi was in a heated argument between Yamanaka Ino and Haruno Sakura, both of whom were gigantic Sasuke fangirls. Naruto was moving between the top half and top quarter of the class, largely due to his poor effort on written assignments, as he often responded when asked about his poor grades. Who cares what the middle name of the Nadime's brother's third youngest sister was? And who cares if Tsunade of the legendary Sannin is the granddaughter of the Shadaime? I mean honestly, when will that ever save my life? Of course, what people fail to notice while he is ranting on like this, is the fact that he knew that Tsunade was a part of the legendary Sannin and was the granddaughter of the first Hokage. It was during one of these rants that he actually got to know Shikamaru, after the lazy genius noticed that Naruto knew those facts. While Naruto may have given up physical pranking for the most part, he still loved to mess with people's heads. As Naruto entered the exam room, he felt confident that he would pass. Before he would have been worried sick over his inability to perform a Bunshin, but now he was able to 2 different kinds of Bunshin, he felt very sure in himself. Okay Naruto, you have to perform a Bunshin to pass. Iruka said. Deciding to play it relatively safe, Naruto created 3 Mizu Bunshin from the glass of water on Iruka's desk. Congratulations, you pass, Iruka said, after he found his voice again and handed him a Konoha forehead protector. After that there was time for celebration. The next day, Naruto and Sasuke showed up for their Genin team assignments. I'd like to congratulate all of you for passing the exam. You are all true shinobi of Konohagakure and should always wear the symbol of the leaf with pride. Iruka explained as he began assigning teams. It wasn't until he reached Team 7 that Naruto paid any attention. Team 7, Uchiha Sasuke, Uzumaki Naruto. At this, the two brothers exchanged high fives and head nods in silent approval. And Haruno Sakura. Iruka finished. Team 8 will be, but before Iruka could continue, he was cut off by Sakura's voice. Iruka-sensei, why am I on a team with Naruto? Won't that make the teams unbalanced? She asked in a way that made it sound less insulting than it really was. Normally you'd be right, Sakura, but Sasuke was the number 1 rookie. Naruto ended up around the middle of the class, and although you are the second-ranked kunoichi, all of the teachers thought you could learn the most from being with Sasuke and Naruto. Iruka explained. Now, Team 8 will be Aburame Shino, Hyuga Hinata, and Inuzuka Kiba. Team 9, and with that Naruto quit paying attention again. However, he was rudely interrupted from his lazing when Team 10 was announced. Team 10, Nara Shikamaru, Akamichi Choji, and Yamanaka Ino. This got a groan of displeasure from Shikamaru and Ino. Your Junin senseis will be here shortly to collect your teams. Iruka explained before leaving the room as various Junin came into the room and picked up teams. Eventually the only team left was Team 7. Sakura was trying to talk with Sasuke, who had created a Mizu Bunshin and then used a basic camouflage jutsu to hide while he sat with Naruto, who was somewhere in between sleeping and daydreaming. 2.5 hours later, a very late Kakashi entered the room, only to be hit on the head with an eraser. He was then forced to dodge 2 kunai, thrown by Sasuke and Naruto, while Sakura simply tried to stammer an apology for her rude and childish teammate, completely ignoring the fact that Sasuke had also thrown a kunai at the Junin, and if anything was aiming to do more damage than Naruto, since he was aiming for Kakashi's family jewels. Well, my first impression of you guys is, I really don't like you. The pepper-haired Junin replied. Meet me on the roof. With that he disappeared in a cloud of smoke. When the 3 genin arrived at the roof, they found Kakashi sitting on a ledge, reading one of his perverted books. He noticed that Naruto and Sasuke arrived first, followed by a very wet, and very angry Sakura. What happened? The Junin asked. She tried to hug a Mizu Bunshin. Came Naruto's reply, his face creeping into a large grin, which was mirrored by Sasuke. Anyway, why don't you all introduce yourselves? You know, likes, dislikes, hobbies, dreams for the future, those kinds of things. Kakashi ordered. Why don't you go first? Asked a drenched Sakura. My name is Hitaki Kakashi. I don't feel like telling you my likes, my dislikes are personal. As for dreams for the future, I suppose I have a couple of hobbies. Okay, you're up, Pinky. My name is Haruno Sakura. My likes are, she glanced at Sasuke. My dream for the future, glanced at Sasuke again. My hobbies, stared at Sasuke. I hate Naruto and Ino Pig. Oh great, a love-struck fangirl. How come all the kunoichi these days only care about boys? Why couldn't I have gotten one like that girl guy has? She's very talented and useful. Kakashi's sweat dropped. For the first time in his life, he actually envied Maida guy. The world was ending, he was sure of it. Okay, one of you two, I don't really care which one. He said and motioned towards Naruto and Sasuke. My name is Uchiha Sasuke. I like my family, I dislike, no I hate, my fangirls. I don't have any hobbies, my dream is to start my own family and to help Ka-san. Of course this is what Sakura heard. I like my family, and Sakura. I want to marry Sakura and love her for all of eternity. This caused her to try and hug the Uchiha again, only to find herself hugging Kakashi, who Sasuke had used as a replacement. This, it was safe to say, caused Naruto to fall to the ground laughing harder than ever, clutching his sides. Ha ha. My name is Uzumaki Naruto. Ha ha ha. I like ramen and my family. I dislike anyone who would hurt my family. My hobbies are trying out new ramen flavors, and training, and I want to become Hokage and haha help my family achieve their dreams. He stated, his words turning into fits of laughter every once in a while. Well, that's it for introductions. Meet me tomorrow at 7 o'clock at Training Ground 32 for survival training. Kakashi exclaimed as he went to leave. But then he noticed that both boys had their Sharingan active, hoping to copy the technique he used to teleport away earlier. He decided to simply take the stairs. As he walked away, he heard the angered cries from the two. Damn you, we will figure out how you do that cool technique. Sakura was very angry. It was 9 o'clock in the morning, and neither her teammates nor sensei was at the training grounds. Sure, Kakashi had shown up late yesterday, but surely he wouldn't do the same thing twice, right? Wrong. Not only was he was even later than yesterday. Not to mention the fact that Naruto and Sasuke weren't there yet either. Just as she was about to storm out of the area and find her tardy teammates, the two boys in question appeared on the edge of the area, chatting and walking at a relaxed pace. Seeing the two walk in so casually made Sakura's already boiling blood bubble over. What the hell are you two doing? She screamed at the boys when they came in range of her voice. You're 2 hours late. Oh, Sasuke-kun, did that baka slow you down? I know you wouldn't be late if he didn't. She gushed at her crush. The pair was saved from answering her by the arrival of their gray-haired sensei. Yo. Kakashi greeted the team with his standard introduction. You're late. Sakura bellowed at the Junin. Well, you see, there was this dog attacking a mime, and he couldn't call for help, so I had to spend the next hour trying to decipher his gestures. He wasn't very good. Then when I took him to the hospital, he still refused to talk, even to give his name and other information, so that took a while. Kakashi explained. You're lying. Sakura accused bitterly. Anyway, your test is to get these from me, before this timer goes off. Kakashi explained, showing the 2 silver bells. If you don't, I'll send you back to the academy. He drawled lazily. But sensei, there are only 2 bells. Sakura dumbly stated. Yes, well, this exam does have a high rate of failure. Their sensei explained. Well, the timer is set for noon, so you've got about 3 hours to get a bell. Begin. With that, the 3 genin hopefuls disappeared into the surrounding forest. Well, Naruto and Sasuke are well hidden. They might actually be able to pass this time, if they can get Sakura to work with them. Kakashi thought, while taking note of the surroundings. All 3 genin were hidden well, although he could still see them, but then again, he wasn't a Junin for nothing. Meanwhile, Sakura was watching Kakashi impatiently. She was sure that Naruto would jump the gun and attack their sensei first, but it seemed like he had more sense than she gave him credit for. I must try and find Sasuke-kun, and then we can come up with a plan to get those bells. She thought as she searched the area for her crush, however she couldn't find him or Naruto. She quietly moved around the shrubs and bushes trying to find the Uchiha heir, but she failed. As time began to tick away, she became more and more worried. If she didn't get a bell soon, she would never be on the same team as her beloved Sasuke-kun. As she was searching, Kakashi found himself occupied with a 2-sided attack from the boys. Naruto attacked from the left and Sasuke the right. The boys targeted his feet, which the Junin easily dodged by jumping in the air, only to meet a pair of kunai thrown from the boys on his way up. He was taken by their thoroughness. The kunai didn't leave him room to dodge them, and so he quickly blocked them. Before he could be too proud of himself, he was knocked back towards earth by the boys, this time from above. One set must be clones of some sort. Kakashi concluded. But damn, that stung. He was met once again by 2 fists, courtesy of Naruto and Sasuke, his own weight increasing the force of the blow. However, his body was quickly replaced by a section of log. Shit. Kawarimi. Replacement technique, the boys thought, before scattering back into the woods to hide. Meanwhile, Kakashi was nursing an aching back and thanking his lucky stars that the boys were slower coming up than going down. If the attack had been coordinated and struck at the same time, they might have very well gotten the bells. Sakura saw the display of taijutsu from the tag team with mouth agape and eyes wide. Who knew that Naruto and Sasuke could fight so well together? This time she was able to keep her eyes trained on the boys and she quickly made her way towards the two before she was interrupted. Yo! Kakashi's voice traveled to her ears from behind and slightly above her and she quickly whirled around, kunai in her hand in a defensive stance. But when her eyes caught up to her body, she didn't find her teacher. In fact, she didn't find anything. What she did find was a big black emptiness that engulfed her. Suddenly out of the darkness a weak voice emerged, calling for her assistance. Sakura. Why you need to? Kakashi he. Sasuke's broken voice was quickly followed up by his equally broken body, kunai puncturing his arms like a pin cushion and he was showing signs of obvious blood loss. Upon seeing her crush's deformed features, Sakura proceeded to promptly faint at the genjutsu she had been ensnared in. Kakashi was watching the kunoichi and sweat dropped at her inability to recognize the obvious mental attack. Okay, maybe Megan. Narakumi no Jutsu, demonic illusion, hell viewing technique, was a little much. Kakashi thought, nah, it isn't a high-level genjutsu or anything, she should have been able to detect it. The report said she'd make a great genjutsu specialist, like Kurenai. Now there's a thought, how come she wasn't put with her? Kakashi was unable to think too long, he still had 2 genin to humiliate, or test, however he felt like seeing it. Much to his dismay, however, the 2 siblings were very difficult to find, causing the Junin to consider using his dogs once or twice. But such tricks shouldn't be wasted on genin, and he decided to follow the sparse clues they left about for him. Twice he thought he had cornered the duo, only to find them to be shadow clones using henge, or Mizu Bunshin. These 2 would be very interesting to teach. The gray-haired man mused. Eventually, he was able to find them. His excellent tracking abilities and above-average speed helped him locate the boys. They were in a clearing, taking stock of their kunai and other gear. They had shown great skill at trap setting and recognition. They had picked through the double-layered traps he had laid with ease and it was unlikely that they would encounter more than 2 layers of traps. Before he could even greet them, he was forced to dodge a set of kunai courtesy of Naruto and a swift taijutsu attack from Sasuke. Kakashi was able to block the right jab from the Uchiha, and the ensuing left roundhouse kick. He even managed to grab the boy's left hand as it flew towards his face, but it was during this period of fighting that Naruto snuck up from behind to grab the bells. With both of his hands occupied grappling with Sasuke, Kakashi couldn't use any techniques to stop the younger boy. But he was an elite ninja after all, and he had the perfect solution to this problem. He tripped the attacking boy. Yep, Mr. I'll be the next Hokage, was tripped and thus missed his chance to grab the silver bells that were so critical to their success. Quickly, Kakashi threw Sasuke into his brother, giving him the space to perform a quick counter-attack. As the boys picked themselves up from the ground they noticed the glaring absence of their sensei. However, they remembered a pearl of wisdom their mother had implanted with them. If you can't see your enemy, go to a place where you have a good defensive and observational position. The 2 scattered into the tree branches, just as Kakashi exploded from the ground. The 2 quickly flashed through the hand seals for Kaden, Hausenka no Jutsu, fire type, mythical phoenix flower, and peppered the surrounding area with the miniature fireballs. Kakashi was forced to dodge them and in doing so, moved him back towards a thick grove of trees. These 2 will be interesting. Now if they could just figure out the true purpose of this test. The Junin mused to himself, dodging the joint attack from the boys once more. Sasuke quickly flashed through the seals for Hausenka no Jutsu once more, forcing the Junin to dodge to his right and confront Naruto, who flashed through the seals for Kaden. Gukakyu no Jutsu Fire Type, Grand Fire Ball, and inhaled deeply before launching a large ball of flame from his mouth. As the fire settled down, the duo was able to make out the form of a tree section, once more the victim of a Kawarimi no Jutsu, courtesy of the masked Junin. Said Junin was currently cursing the two for actually making him work so hard to put them down. Their tandem style of attacking was very good, and both boys were better fighters than either of their profiles had indicated. Sasuke had much more chakra than his profile stated and a greater level of control as well. Naruto was simply faster and stronger than indicated. Together the two made an excellent team and in the coming years would prove to be invaluable to the Leaf. As he was mulling this over in his mind, he heard the ring of the timer, indicating that the three had run out of time. Well, I guess that it's Sakura I'll be tying to the tree this time. Kakashi stated more to himself than to the boys who were stewing over their inability to retrieve the bells. Sakura opened her eyes and found herself staring at her sensei. Well, actually, she was staring at his legs, and when she tried to stand up, she found herself tied to a large wooden stump. To her right were the boys, who still seemed angry that they hadn't retrieved the bells. Well, that was informative. The voice of her tardy sensei drifted towards her ears. Sakura, your profile stated that you were excellent at recognizing genjutsu, but you fell for a fairly simple one. If you can't focus under pressure, then you will not survive your first battle between ninja. Sasuke and Naruto, your planning was excellent, your execution was nearly flawless, and you both showed great potential, but you lost track of time, which is one of the more important things a shinobi must keep track of, especially in the field. Although you all failed, Naruto and Sasuke showed that the records of this village are a bit outdated, so I will give you another chance. But it will be much harder than before. He tossed 2 bentos towards the boys. You two can eat, but don't give any to Sakura. Be ready to come at me with the intent to kill me after lunch. With that he poofed away in a cloud of white smoke, leaving the threesome alone. The boys began to eat their lunches, but stopped about halfway through. Sakura was inwardly fuming over the fact that it was her own uselessness that nearly cost them their opportunity to become genin. Her stomach was growling, already having digested her light breakfast, and wishing that she could eat the food the boys had left over. It came as a great surprise to her when the 2 boys offered their remaining food to the pink-haired girl. Here, eat up, Sasuke directed. But, Kakashi-sensei told you guys not to give me any food. She dumbly stated. Yeah, but he isn't here right now, and besides, we're pretty sure the idea of the test is to exhibit teamwork. I mean, why else would teams be made of 3 people? He can't send one of us back to the academy, it's either all or nothing. Naruto explained, filling her in on the conversation he and Sasuke had earlier as Sasuke cut through the ropes tying her to the stump. Sakura quickly rubbed the feeling back into her wrists and was about to take the first bite of food, when Kakashi reappeared in another cloud of smoke. You, pass. His voice changing from unbridled fury to a complimentary tone in mere seconds. He was greeted by 2 smirks and a look of surprise from his students. Naruto and Sasuke were right, you are in a 3-man team for a reason. I can't fail just 1 or 2 of you, it's all or nothing. Sasuke and Naruto showed that they could work together very well, but to be a team, the 3 of you must be willing to cooperate and work as a team. Do you see that monument over there? That is the monument for fallen heroes. They have all died in the name of this village. Some of them should be here right now, walking around, but they aren't because they either couldn't, or didn't work as a team. Remember, the 3 of you are a team, but you are more than just 3 names on a piece of paper in some filing cabinet. To become a complete team, you must trust each other to do what you alone cannot. From this point forth, you are Team 7, but you must become comrades and friends if you truly wish to become a team. Remember, in this world of shinobi, those who break the rules are considered trash. None of the other teams I have instructed shared their food with the other member. They were foolish enough to listen to my instructions, but those who would abandon their friends, they are worse than trash. The three genin sat, listening to Kakashi's explanation. They were all thinking the same thing. It seems like he knows this from personal experience. Come to think of it, he probably does. Well, anyway, meet me at the Hokage Tower tomorrow for your first mission. With that, Kakashi poofed away in a cloud of smoke to the chorus of curses coming from the two boys. That night there was a celebration in the Mitarashi household. Anko took the boys out to dinner for their accomplishments. She told the boys that no one had ever passed Kakashi's test before, so she was really proud of them. She bought each of her sons a new set of kunai as well as an imitation of her own trademark trench coat. Sasuke's was a dark blue that almost seemed black and had the Uchiha crest on the back. It had many hidden pockets for carrying weapons as well as other supplies. Naruto's was a dark gray and the only markings on it was the hybrid Uchiha fan and Uzumaki swirl design he had created. It was proudly worn on the collar of his coat. It was a great surprise when the Sandaime also gave them some gifts. Sasuke received a very old manual from the Hokage, that was supposedly from his ancestors. It was all about how to manipulate fire for different techniques and is thought to have led to the creation of many of the newer fire jutsu. Naruto received different books and scrolls that taught the basics of sealing. The Sandaime explained that while the Yondaime didn't have a bloodline limit in the traditional sense, he did create many different seals that could only be used by people of his blood. Sarutobi had learned, in his many dealings with Naruto, that if any information was written down, the boy would pick it up very quickly. It was when information was simply shown to him, or during oral examinations that the boys struggled. In truth, Sarutobi knew the two types of clone he had mentioned to the boy, but he couldn't teach them to Naruto. He knew that sooner or later, the boys would probably copy the Mizu Bunshin from Kakashi, or an opponent. As for the Tsuchi Bunshin, Sarutobi himself had learned the technique as a gift when he first became Hokage, with the understanding that he never write it down or teach it to anyone. He wasn't going to break the trust of the elderly Tsuchikage over a matter as trivial as a technique. As he watched the family finish dinner and joke around, he couldn't help but be proud. The will of fire was clearly evident in this young generation, and it shone on a bright future for Konoha. Anko was exceptionally proud of her sons, however, she also was a bit weary for them. Naruto had never been outside of the village, both for his own safety. There was talk of an organization which was interested in the demon vessels, and because of what he might possibly represent to the village. A weapon of great power. She shuddered every time she thought of her son that way. She had heard rumors of another vessel, from the Wind Country, who had a taste for blood and was about her son's age. She only hoped that they didn't come to the next Chunin exam, or there might be a fight of catastrophic size. Sasuke hadn't been outside the village since the massacre. Since he represented the last of a bloodline, his survival was key to the village. Letting him go away would be a golden opportunity for assassins from other villages. When they left the village on a mission, she didn't know how they would react. Naruto would probably like it, a chance to see something new, learn new techniques, or just meet new people. Sasuke, she didn't know how he would take it. In the almost 3 years since he had been living with her, he had changed remarkably. He was lively and energetic, he was obsessive with his training, but Naruto was able to reach him, and she was glad. If he had turned into an Avenger, she didn't know what she would have done. Probably beat him into a pulp. She mused to herself. It was then that she decided to be a part of her son's first mission outside of the village. That way, They would have a familiar face if something were to go wrong. What am I thinking? She mentally berated herself. They have to do a bunch of crappy D-rank missions first. I wonder who will take it the worst. Naruto. Or Sasuke. She couldn't help but smile and snicker at the mental images of her son's faces when they found out that their first 20 or so missions would probably involve weeding some lazy civilian's garden. 2 weeks have passed since Team 7 passed their test, and the members were well entrenched into the shinobi life by now. They were used to getting up early, only to remember that Kakashi was always 2 hours late. They were used to training, which consisted mainly of physical exercises and light sparring. But they weren't used to the crappy D-rank missions they were receiving. While Sasuke kept up an emotionless facade, he was inwardly steaming, swearing on the graves of his deceased parents, that if he had to weed one more garden, he was going to find a way to resurrect the dead members of the clan and then kill them himself. Naruto was angry as well. He was pissed that he was doing grunt work when he could be off chasing bandits or doing something productive, like training, or eating ramen, anything to stop the monotony. Sakura was getting bored doing the same tedious jobs over and over, but she was also glad that these short missions gave the team ample time to train, something she realized she needed to do much more of. She was currently waiting for her 3 other teammates at their regular meeting place, a small bridge that spanned a small river and was roughly halfway between the 3 genins' houses. She was adamant about punctuality and continued to show up before her teammates, although now it was only about 10 minutes before the others now. She was currently researching different ways to increase her power. Given that she had excellent chakra control, albeit a small amount, she found 2 different fields that were perfect for her, medicine and genjutsu. She was trying to figure out which area to concentrate on, but was having a hard time deciding. The 2 weeks had shown a marked increase in the trio's teamwork. She learned a lot about her teammates and was rethinking her previous notions about them, especially Naruto. Before, she would have written the multicolored-haired boy off as a general idiot and fool that had only just squeaked by the academy, but now, he had proven himself to be intelligent, physically strong, and cheerful, despite these strange looks he often received. Sakura had heard rumors about her teammate, but she didn't know what to think of them. From what she had pieced together, she would never just go up and ask him. He had been separated from his mother after the Kyuubi attack and not rejoined with her until he was 7. His mother was a Junin and was the former apprentice of the traitor Sanin, Orochimaru. Due to her connections with the powerful ninja, she was often disrespected and sometimes hated. For whatever reason, Sasuke had moved in with the 2 and had been living with them since his family died. But, just because the people don't like his mom, do they really hate him? She thought. When she told her sensei that the things she disliked were Ino and Naruto, she was basing those on what she had seen. Many of the civilians of the village often shot glares at the boy and muttered curses behind his back. When she asked her parents why, the answer she was looking for was skirted, and if her parents were in a good mood, they would simply tell her she wouldn't understand and that she should probably keep her distance from him. Yet all of the new data she had told her that Naruto was trustworthy and protective of his teammates and would never hurt anyone that didn't deserve it. He was a mystery, and she would figure him out sooner or later. As Sakura was contemplating Naruto's life, the rest of her team was making their way towards the bridge for their next mission. She absent-mindedly greeted the boys as they arrived only minutes before Kakashi showed up, and they made their way towards the Hokage Tower for their assignment. Damn them. Damn them to hell. Sakura was fuming as she waited for her tardy sensei. Somehow, the boys had managed to talk the Hokage into giving them a C-rank mission instead of the boring and safe D-rank ones they normally got. She was beside herself. She didn't want to look weak in front of Sasuke, but she doubted her ability to perform up to par on the harder mission. Hence the cursing of her teammates, them and that annoyingly late sensei. I mean, Would it kill him to be on time once? Apparently it would, because he was running an astounding 2.5 hours late. If he didn't have the client with them, then the three would have left a long time ago, with or without Kakashi. The threat potential on sea-level missions was mostly bandits and those were rare. Yo, sorry we're late, there was this drowning fish and it needed to be given CPR and someone glued my mask to my face, so I had to instruct Tazuna-san here how to do it. Kakashi greeted the trio with a smile, or at least what they had come to interpret as a smile, and a wave of his head. Tazuna was simply staring at the man in disbelief. He was buying supplies and he tells them I was giving CPR to a fish. Tazuna thought as Sakura yelled, "Liar!" at the Junin. The group was walking along the road between Konoha and the Wave Country and it was very boring. The only interesting thing was a quick lesson about the different shinobi nations and their leaders. Besides the Hokage, when this was mentioned, Naruto supplied that he would be the greatest Hokage of all time one day. There was the Raikage, Kazekage, Mizukage, and Tsuchikage, who were the leaders of the Cloud Village, Sand Village, Mist Village and Stone Village, respectively. When he was done talking, the team and their charge drifted back into a lull of inactivity. Naruto, who was in the front, was searching for signs of bandit attacks or ambushes. Sasuke, who was behind him, was mostly sightseeing and enjoying his time out of the village. Tazuna was worried that he was sending these three kids to their death if they were to encounter the true reason he needed escorting, and Sakura returned to pondering over her teammates. They became so entrenched in their various activities that when an inconspicuous puddle came into view, no one immediately realized that something was wrong. Kakashi was the first to notice that a rather large puddle had formed in the road when there hadn't been any rain for days. Naruto probably would have overlooked it, if he hadn't been bored and activated his Sharingan. It was a habit he had developed, although he wasn't sure why, but if he got bored, he would activate the Sharingan and try to copy new jutsu or just the way people acted and walked. On this occasion he saw the chakra flowing from the deposit of water and silently signaled Sasuke that there were enemies about. Sasuke, in turn, turned towards Kakashi, catching the attention of Sakura, but the Junin didn't seem to be paying attention, but Sasuke noticed his eyes were harder than normal. He must have noticed them. He reasoned and turned his attention to the front, where Naruto was deciding what to do. This is AC rank. There shouldn't be any chance of shinobi encounters. Naruto reasoned to himself. But if I attack them and they aren't after Tazuna-san, then I could start something I can't get out of. He gulped at the thought of possibly attacking another Junin. He settled for a simple strategy. He passed through the puddle and watching the reaction of the liquid, trotting in it purposely. Sasuke followed suit, but Sakura and Tazuna walked around it, while Kakashi just ignored it. As he passed, the puddle quickly changed shape into two men, whose faces were covered with horned masks bearing the symbol of the hidden Mist Village. They had metal gauntlets on their arms, connected by a serrated metal chain, which was covered with a deadly poison. The masked duo quickly ran forward and wrapped their chain around Kakashi, and before anyone could do much more than look surprised, they pulled the sharp chain through the Junin, separating his body into many different sections. One down. Their voices were given a deeper timbre by the masks they wore, and they were good tag team fighters. They quickly moved towards Tazuna and Sakura. Sakura was frozen, seeing her sensei ripped apart by the two masked ninja in front of her, and it wasn't until the forms of Naruto and Sasuke leapt in front of her and their client that she realized how close the two attackers were. Naruto completed the seals for Kaden, Hausenka no Jutsu, forcing the pair to either jump up, due to the area covered by the small fireballs, or disengage the chain and dodge separately. The pair jumped up into the air, just as Naruto intended for them, only to be greeted by a much larger fireball, courtesy of Sasuke. The ball of intense flame connected with the pair, although they were able to lessen much of the damage by disconnecting the chain and twisting to the side. It was during the masked men's dodge that Naruto leapt into the air and threw a pair of kunai attached with wire at the pair, successfully capturing one ninja, the kunai acting as weights like a bola and then embedding themselves into a tree, with just the slightest help from the boy's bloodline. Meanwhile, Sasuke was engaged with the other ninja in a taijutsu match. He was easily dodging the slowed blows, thanks to a combination of Sharingan and the fact that the armor of his foe was slowing him down. The masked ninja launched a clawed palm at the Uchiha's face, only for the boy to duck under the blow and land a straight jab into the attacking shinobi's stomach, doubling him over. Before the mist ninja could even blink, Sasuke's knee connected with his face, sending his head reeling backwards, once more exposing his stomach. His clawed hands flew to his face to staunch the blood flowing from his nose. Only then did the mist ninja remember the poison on his oversized clawed gloves. Upon impact with his face, the poison on his claws mixed with the blood that was trickling into his mouth through the crack in his mask caused by the boy he was fighting. At first he staggered backwards, probably from the force of Sasuke's knee, but he quickly dropped to his knees before falling on his stomach, dead. Seeing his brother's death, the second ninja tried to cut himself with his own gauntlet, only for it to be forcibly held to his side by an unseen force. Now, we need someone to question. Naruto grinned at the captured foe. Excellent work, you two. Kakashi's lazy voice greeted the ninjas and their charge. Sensei, but how, you, Chain, died? Sakura's gaping mouth was able to form that disconnected sentence after the initial shock of her sensei's return wore off. She glanced at the pieces of his body. A twig was sticking out of his midsection. Wait. A twig? He had used Kawarimi before the deadly duo had cut him with the chain and substituted himself with a section of tree. Kakashi turned to face the captured man and asked who their target was. The masked ninja didn't reply. He reached up and lifted his forehead protector, but from the position of the genin, they couldn't see what he was doing. After a moment the incapacitated ninja's eyes widened in horror and he began to scream and yell. The bridge maker. Over and over until he passed out. Lowering his headband, Kakashi turned and leveled his gaze at Tazuna. It would seem, he started, that Tazuna-san needs to explain a few things before we continue. Damn it, damn it, damn it. Sakura was more than angry with her luck today. First of all, she was sent on a mission she probably wasn't ready for, and now she was on a mission she definitely wasn't ready for. Damn that drunken man. As she cussed out Tazuna, she wondered who she was more pissed off at. Tazuna, the man who had lied about the mission specs, or Gato, the man who was harassing the people of the Wave Village. The other thought floating around in her mind was her sensei. What was hidden under his protector that it would cause an assassin to cry out in horror? Maybe he lost his eye and he showed him the empty socket. She thought, shuddering at the thought. After Tazuna explained that he was trying to bring relief to the oppressed village by means of the new bridge he was building, much of the mystery surrounding the attack of the Nuke Nin was resolved. The Wave Country village was a once thriving place, until Gato, a ruthless businessman, had set his sights on it. He had entered and wrecked the economy of the town through blockades and violence. If the bridge was completed, it would be a gateway for new supplies and goods to enter the town. After some discussion, and more than a little crying from Tazuna, the team decided it would continue the mission. If the bridge was completed, then not only would the economy of the village return, but trade between the Konoha and the hopefully reinvigorated sea town would blossom. They would request assistance when they reached the relative safety of the town. Kakashi explained that the mission was at least B rank now, and if they encountered a Junin ninja it would escalate again to A rank. The group was making good time after the ambush and had an uneventful trip across the water surrounding the Wave Country. After they made landfall, they headed towards Tazuna's house so they could send for help. About midway between the house and their landing spot, Naruto, who was leading the group still, suddenly threw a kunai at a bush to his left. Sasuke quickly followed suit, adding a Gukakyu no Jutsu to scorch the area in case Naruto hit anything. As the foliage began to burn down a bit, they discovered a rather terrified snowshoe hare, hugging against the farthest tree for his life. Kakashi quickly doused the fire with a small sweetened jutsu. However, he pondered about the appearance of the hare. That's a snow hare, but it hasn't molted yet, it's the middle of summer, it should have turned brown by now. Unless, it was raised to be used in a replacement. It seems that tougher competition has arrived. He was sure to keep his visible eye open for any signs of their enemy. It was a good thing too, because not 5 minutes after his genins almost barbecued an innocent hare, a giant sword came flying at the team from behind. Everyone, get down now, he ordered, throwing himself at the ground as Sasuke and Sakura managed to bring down their ward and Naruto flattened himself out as well. The sword embedded itself into the trunk of a large tree, and when the group raised their heads to look at the weapon, they found a fairly tall man with spiky brown hair. His forehead protector was askew to his left and his mouth was covered in bandages. He wore no shirt, but his forearms were covered in camouflaged warmers and he stood on his sword with an air of confidence. Ah, the copy ninja, Hitaki Kakashi, no wonder the demon brothers failed to kill the bridge builder. His voice was deep and ominous, sending chills down the backs of Tazuna and Sakura. Naruto and Sasuke were affected a bit, but it was less intense, due to their mother's training. Momochi Zabuza, Nuke Nin of Kurigakure. As you can see, I too read the bingo book. Kakashi replied, his voice didn't carry any of his usual laziness. He once more reached up and lifted the barrier obscuring his left eye. Oh, the Sharingan, I get to see it already. How interesting. Zabuza leapt off his large head cleaver and onto the surface of the water, taking the large sword with him in one movement. He raised his right hand up to his face and raised the index and middle fingers, while his left arm stood straight up, the fingers mimicking those of his other hand. A thick fog suddenly rolled through the area, obscuring the woods and its occupants. The chakra being released by the two Junins was something to be in awe of. Sakura, who was much more aware of chakra signatures than the boys, was having a hard time refraining from screaming in terror. The killing intent of the enemy Junin was focused at the genin and their instructor. Don't worry Sakura, I won't let any of my teammates die. Kakashi turned towards the team, his eyes closed and a smile played on his lips. Running vertical along the center of his left eye was a long since healed scar. This led to another train of thought for the pink-haired girl. I thought the Sharingan was the bloodline of the Uchiha clan, but then how does Kakashi-sensei have it? Is he related to Sasuke-kun maybe? Suddenly, Zabuza appeared in the center of the defensive perimeter the team had set up around Tazuna, sword stretched across his back, ready to slay the three genin. But almost as soon as he appeared, Kakashi was there, planting a kunai into the side of the enemy, only for the body to turn to water and fall to the ground in a pool of liquid. Mizu Bunshin, he thought as he quickly searched for the missing nin. However, Zabuza got the upper hand and appeared behind the leaf Junin. His sword swung at Kakashi's waist and ripped him apart, only for the gray-haired man to turn into water as well. Zabuza's eyes opened in astonishment. He copied my technique in this fog. The Sharingan truly is a weapon to be feared. As he finished thinking, Zabuza felt the unmistakable edge of a kunai pressed against his neck. It's over, Kakashi said, coldly. Are you sure about that? Suddenly, Zabuza dissolved into water once more, the product of a Mizu Bunshin. This time it was Kakashi's eyes that widened. He suddenly found himself flying towards the river a few meters away from the group. He didn't notice the impact of Zabuza's leg, but it was strong enough to send him into the water. Zabuza rushed towards the river, before stopping suddenly. Makebishi. Good try, but not good enough, Kakashi. He quickly back-flipped onto the river's surface once more. Kakashi's head broke the surface of the lake, trying to find his adversary, only to realize that it was far too late. Zabuza stood at his side, forming hand seals very quickly. Suoro no Jutsu. Water type. Water prison technique. He spoke the jutsu with practiced ease, and the surrounding water quickly engulfed Kakashi into a swirling sphere of water. Zabuza's right arm was sticking into the sphere, holding it together and increasing the density of the water to trap the illustrious copy ninja. Run. He can't follow you while he keeps this jutsu up. Kakashi pleaded with his team. Naruto let out a short laugh. Nope. Not gonna happen, sensei. Those that would abandon their comrades are worse than trash, right? He gave his brother a quick look and the two rushed the Miss Junin, only to stop at the water's edge when Zabuza created a Mizu Bunshin without using hand seals. The two boys attacked the clone, but were thrown back by the flat of the giant sword their attacker wielded. Searching the surrounding area for anything that could be used to fight off the clone, something on the ground caught Sasuke's eye. Hey, Naruto, he gestured towards the ground off to the side of the clone that was steadily making its way towards the boys. Naruto looked towards his teammate was indicating and got the meaning of the unspoken sentence. Well, shit, I didn't want to do it, but you got a point. The blondish boy spoke, before raising his arm and pointing it to the left of the clone, his eyes closed in concentration. Meanwhile, Sasuke was throwing shuriken and kunai at the clone, only for them to be blocked by the giant sword. Thinking quickly, he created a Mizu Bunshin from the river and used it to catch the clone in a pincer move, but the Junin's clone was much too strong and destroyed the clone before once more kicking the Uchiha away. Those students of yours are weak. Zabuza commented, off-handedly to Kakashi. The Konoha Junin didn't respond, but watched his students fight against a superior opponent. He watched as Sasuke was once more repelled and fell to the ground. But as he rose, both of the Junin noticed that his face wasn't contorted in pain or frustration, but plastered with a smirk of superiority. Naruto, now, Sasuke yelled. Naruto simply smirked, eerily reminiscent of his brother, and waved his arm. In a fraction of a second, the Mizu Bunshin disintegrated and Zabuza was hit with an unseen force, and the shock of the attack forced him to release the water prison. What was that? Sakura wondered in awe. Zabuza's right arm began to drip blood as he brought it to his face to inspect the damage. He found the small makibishi lodged in his arm and stomach. The spiked pieces of metal, normally used to impede enemies' movements, had become a rather effective ranged weapon. How the hell did that brat do that? He cursed mentally, drawing his sword and advancing towards the duo, until he was stopped by Kakashi's figure rising from the river in front of him. Your fight is with me, he calmly stated, locking eyes with Zabuza. Damn it, this guy is pissing me off. Zabuza commented to himself as he began the hand seals for the Suiden Suiryuden no Jutsu, water type, water dragon technique. As he flashed through the seals, he noticed something peculiar in the behavior of his opponent. He was doing the exact same seals, at the exact same time. Suiden Suiryuden. Both Junins cried out at the same time. Two dragons composed of water rose from the raging river and spiraled at their intended target, only to crash into each other. Damn it, it's like he knows, Zabuza started. What I'm going to do next. Kakashi finished. Zabuza's eyes widened in shock as the copy nin read his thoughts. Damn you, Zabuza cursed. Insignificant monkey. Kakashi once more supplied the demon of the mist with the end of his sentence. This time Zabuza didn't respond and just ran through the seals for Suiden Daibikufu no Jutsu. Water type. Great waterfall technique. Kakashi once more imitated his opponent, and when Zabuza locked eyes with his opponent once more, he was startled to find not only Kakashi, but the ghostly figure of himself, standing behind him. Zabuza slowed his seals just a fraction of a second, but it was enough for Kakashi to finish. The water on which the two were standing began to churn around the two and rise up, creating a tidal wave that crashed against the rooted body of Momochi Zabuza. Zabuza felt his body slam into the trunk of a tree, before he was pinned to the trunk with kunai. How is it? That you can see the future? He asked groggily. Your future is death. Kakashi began to move forward, kunai in hand, but was stopped as two metallic needles slammed into the incapacitated Junin's neck, killing him instantly. Everyone in the small clearing created by the battle followed the path of the needles to a masked figure standing on the tree. Thanks, I've been looking to kill Zabuza for quite some time. You were right, his future was death. The person spoke in a voice that sounded like he was the age of the genin, maybe a year or two older, but there was no appreciable difference. Ah, a mist hunter nin. Kakashi said and lowered his headband, covering the Sharingan once more. The hunter nin disappeared in a swirl of leaves, before reappearing next to the body of Zabuza. After a quick series of hand seals, the two disappeared, leaving only Team 7 and Tazuna. Well, this sucks, Kakashi said, before crumpling to the ground and passing out. Kakashi-sensei. Sakura cried out and ran to the side of her teacher to check on him. He appeared to be fine, but he seemed tired somehow. Come on, let's take him to my house, it's just a ways to town from here. Tazuna offered, still in awe at how the team handled themselves.